So how fortunate am I to be able to introduce two apps on the same day? This is a big deal for me. These are, I mean, I'm kind of kidding, but I'm also always kind of serious. So there's this thing that happens that when I get very serious, people kind of laugh and think that I'm kidding. I think maybe that helps everybody be more comfortable. I don't know. I know I have a tendency to be a little intense, but it's just sometimes you just really love somebody, and these are just two of my favorite people. So this is cool. So Christy is the secretary of the current World Trade Center of New Orleans, and she's the vice chair of the Transportation Committee, which means she's also very tolerant of the chair, which is a good thing because I'm not going to reveal her age, but she's been dealing with him for a while, let's say. And so at W.J. Allen & Co., though, Christy is the VP of Business Development and Customer Service. And one thing about Christy that's just really awesomely unique, and I think this comes from maybe being the past president of IFCABANO and having so many ties to the Pilot Commission and the real backbone of the river industry. But I have to say that every time I've ever called Christy, even when I didn't know her as well as I do now, even when I started doing the International Trade Symposium in Point Clear and learning the IFCABANO ropes, and I've got a kind of a suspect import-export issue or just harebrained idea to make some extra money, and I say, what do you think about this? And she says, oh, you can't do that. And I was like, right, but we're going to do it, so help me figure out how to do it the best way possible. And Christy, you know, we try to refer business to each other, but she never asks for any type of consideration or compensation, unless, of course, it's a formal channel engagement. But I just think that people like Christy are so phenomenally helpful, and this organization and this trade community is so fortunate to have somebody like her who loves New Orleans and international trade operations so much. So Christy, if you could please come on up here and do what you do.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. The weather is beautiful. We're not on a shortened timeline to beat a hurricane landfall. So in 2020 and today, I will call that a win. My dad asked me when I was sitting reviewing my notes, he said, are you nervous? I said, no, I'm not nervous. He goes, you look nervous. I said, well, the only thing I'm worried about is falling as I walk up, because this is the second time since March I've worn heels, as well as gotten dressed from top to bottom. I think everybody can relate. The benefit of Zoom meetings is you're only seen from about, belly button to the top of your head. So what I call in the office is that when I walk in wearing my mullet, which is business attire up top and yoga pants on the bottom. So it's, that's my version of a mullet. But it's so nice to be here with all of you all today. It's been 7 months, I think, since I've been in a room with this many people. And it really, really feels nice. Personally, my family and my company has a long history with the World Trade Center. I'm a third-generation freight forwarder and customs broker. My earliest memories of the World Trade Center are so different than it is now. When I was a kid, my mom was working for my dad. I remember my mom sent me, she said, we're in the Whitney Bank building. She said, go around the corner and knock on the window of this white building. I'm like, all right. So there I am as a kid, you're knocking on the building of the International House, and I was knocking on the window because at that time girls couldn't go in. Plus I was underage, so it was twofold. My next memory was as an unpaid summer intern working for my father, and he takes me out into the middle of Common Street and he points me at the World Trade Center or the Trade Mart it was, and says, go to this building and go pick up those documents. And so with that being said, today, and I am 43, I'll acknowledge it, I'm old. I'm so excited to be here today as a female officer of the World Trade Center, making remarks about a friend who is also female and the first female award winner of the Alvin Bertel Award. We have come a long way in 30 years since I've been in the business. I do consider myself, I started when I was unpaid at 13, working for my dad. And I'm so happy and honored to be up here sharing my praise of today's winner. Award recipient. To say a winner just doesn't do it justice. But my sort of path met with Brandy. I remember when Pat Galway, who was a fantastic asset to the port, was retiring as COO. The search began. People were interviewed, you know, and of course New Orleans is small. All the talk goes on, you know, and they hear, oh, they hired this girl. I'm like, oh, that's good, you know. They hired this girl from San Diego. I'm like, oh, I love San Diego, you know. And so, like I do everything, I am a Facebook stalker, I'm a LinkedIn stalker. So as soon as I found it, you know, I'm looking on LinkedIn, went to Port of San Diego, saw Brandy's credentials, and they were absolutely phenomenal. So I was looking forward to meeting her. As we always do when we welcome new people to the city, the port hosted a small party in the atrium. You know, it was a lot of people. I briefly met Brandy, but I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, is she, you know, I see she's from Northern California, spent, you know, 14 years in Southern California. Is she going to be that sort of like NorCal, chill, reserved, or is she going to be like SoCal, cool? You know, so I'm sitting there in Tchoupitoulas leaving the party, you know, in my gas guzzler SUV, you know, at Tchoupitoulas, nothing Julia. And I look to my right, and there's Brandy idling silently in her Toyota Prius. And I was like, problem solved. SoCal, eco-cool friendly. I'm like, we're good. I love it, you know. But Brandy quickly immersed herself in the city, which I thought was so cool. Frank, I think within record time, became a six-in stomper. Brandy became security, or whatever they call the handlers, you know, the six-in splits. But they took to New Orleans right away. And as over the years, with her transition from COO to COO, I've gotten to know Brandy both personally and professionally. And I continue to be impressed not only by her commitment to the port, but also to the trade community as a whole. Her vision extends beyond the vessels and the gantry cranes, and she works to ensure that the port is best positioned to serve the entire transportation community. And we have many examples of that. Over the years, I think this was when you were still COO, when the Solus VGM issue came out, you know, which would have put an extra burden on not only the truckers, but the exporters in the state of Louisiana. And Brandy worked tirelessly, giving testimony to the Coast Guard, to the FMC, and ultimately those regulations were changed to be what they are now, which is where we take the terminal weights. We have a green plan now. You know, within New Orleans, we look at, you know, we have eco-friendly cars at the port. We have a truck plan, you know, that they work tirelessly for to get grants for every year to ensure our trucking community is now can be, are able to afford through this grant program, green trucks. The detention and demurrage, the fact-finding mission with the FMC, fact-finding 29. Detention and demurrage is a huge issue for us in the port community. And yet again, Brandy, as soon as she's called and she's asked, whether it's, you know, I know she's personal friends with Commissioner Rebecca Dye now because of it. So it's, you know, fought tirelessly for us to be able to have a good framework to work with our terminal operators and with our ocean carriers when we do have issues, which was very near and dear to me, and which really, I was so impressed and so proud of Brandy and the entire port team with the New Orleans Public Belt Railroad. That was a bit of a scary time for us in the New Orleans trade community. You know, looking at an asset that we had always considered neutral and fair to everyone, whether you were a railroad or a tenant, and having that possibly be sold off and that neutrality gone. And Brandy and her team worked tirelessly to come up with an option to where the New Orleans Public Belt Railroad now rests in its natural home, which is under the ownership and stewardship of the Port of New Orleans. And I wish we could have gotten a video of that today, but also the greatest thing, which I think is, you know, probably one of the best things to happen, is we're now dredging our river to 50 feet. I mean, how long have we talked about that for? You know, a lot of times in the trade community, we sit there and we talk about things, but that's been a big, you know, she's been a tireless champion of dredging this river making our river more accessible to the larger vessels that are the future. And quite honestly, they are the present. And despite 2020, you know, like I said, in my mullet business attire, I do attend the port meetings. And despite what a hard year 2020 has been, not only on the Port of New Orleans, but quite frankly, all the ports in the U.S., is the commitment to the master plan and the commitment to building and developing a downriver terminal that will ensure New Orleans and the state of Louisiana has a place to grow into the future. You know, personally, no one's more deserving, in my opinion, of this award. And I'm so happy for you, as both a friend and a colleague, up here celebrating you today. And congratulations.
So Congressman Graves couldn't be with us today, but he will be with us by video. He prepared an introduction of our honoree, and I'll introduce him. So as odd as it might seem, me introducing a video to introduce someone who's here live, that's the way we're going to do it. So Event Producers has told us it's totally fine to do that. A lot of y'all know Garrett. I respectfully will call him Congressman Graves as I complete the introduction. But he represents the Louisiana 6th Congressional District. It's a large district, has about 750,000 people, and I think about 13 parishes. It makes up a large geographical swath of the south central portion of Louisiana, I believe, encompassing East Baton Rouge, where he is from. He's a native of Baton Rouge. I know it's the bulk of the capital city suburbs. There are parts of the parishes along both sides of the river that come all the way down, I believe, to the western shore of Mississippi River, right around Laplace, and then cut down through Thibodeau and Houma. If you look at it on a map, it's kind of like an inverted sideways. It's like a little Louisiana inside of Louisiana that kind of cuts across and down. So, but for the 116th Congress, Congressman Graves is the ranking member of the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee on Aviation, and is the ranking member of the new Select Committee on Climate Crisis. He also serves on the House Natural Resources Committee. A lot of things that he has been instrumental in doing weigh very heavily on our industry and have had very positive direct impacts economically and otherwise on what it is that we all do as a collective. And so his leadership on transportation, infrastructure, energy events, maritime items, fisheries, coastal restoration, disaster, and other issues critical to our state's economy and our very way of life are really an asset for us to have in Congress. He understands these issues, and he reaches out to his constituents. He reaches out to community and regional and state leaders, and he most importantly asks for input and feedback. And I think it's a very, very wonderful thing that we have to have somebody like him in Congress. The last Congress, importantly, Congressman Graves chaired the subcommittee on the water resources and environment and was instrumental in the development, passage, and enactment on a range of policy wins that we experienced relating to rivers, of course, levees, flood protection, coastal erosion issues, and reforms relating to Corps of Engineers activities. He also brought about a critical upgrade to the Federal Disaster Response and Recovery Program, streamlining FEMA application and operations, and creating faster recoveries and helping make communities across the nation more resilient to disaster. And I say across the nation because some of the things that he has helped us do here have served as a model for other similarly situated communities around the country, and that's to be commended as well. Of course, Congressman Graves secured full funding for the Comite River diversion, West Shore, and other major flood protection projects, some of which had been stalled for decades. And so it's important that he got in there, saw there was a need for something to be reactivated, and a lot of these projects are now fast-tracked for completion. And really that means, in brass tacks terms, better flood protection for us and perhaps lower flood insurance rates for us and the people who we serve in the future. So without any further ado, Congressman Graves.
Hey, it's Congressman Garrett Graves, and I can't tell you how much I would love to be there with you today. Not just because people in Washington are crazy, but also because Brandy Christian is a great friend and a fantastic leader for the Port of New Orleans. Now look, New Orleans is an incredible asset for a lot of reasons, but I'll tell you one of the best assets in New Orleans is the Mississippi River. But it's not just an asset if you let it sit there. It's an asset if you truly invest in it, if you truly have a vision, and that's exactly what Brandy's brought to the table. You know, the Mississippi River connects to 31 different states. From the Port of New Orleans, we have direct access to 60 ports, and through transshipping and break bulk, we can connect to 450 different port facilities around the United States. It is amazing. And Brandy hasn't just thought about what the Port of New Orleans needs to look like for 2020, but truly thinking about what it needs to look like in 2030 in the future. And that's why she's put together the strategic master plan that has resulted in $2 billion in additional investment in the Port of New Orleans. Brandy, I have no idea where you got all that money from, but your secret's safe with us. Look, you've seen her come in and recognize the trends in containerized cargo, and so making investments in additional cranes, recognizing that the port system between Baton Rouge and the Gulf is the largest one in the world, and if these port systems are not cooperating and working together, then we're not truly capitalizing on this investment and capitalizing on this strategic advantage that we have. And Brandy has brought together partnerships, whether it's working with us on the container on barge to where you can take containers, throw them on a barge, and take them all the way to Kenner. Just kidding. Taking it all the way up the Mississippi River system and getting those trucks off the roads, helping with traffic, helping with congestion, lowering emissions, all sorts of wins. She's been able to lure additional cruise ships to where last year we had 1.2 million cruise ship passengers in the Port of New Orleans coming through, and been able to attract even more with Disney, with Royal Caribbean year-round service to the Port of New Orleans. So truly thinking about the future, thinking about having more diverse investments and more diverse business in the Port of New Orleans. She helped to design the acquisition of the Public Belt Railroad to ensure that we can facilitate this intermodalism between the Port of New Orleans and the 6 Class 1 rail lines that we connect to, one of only 2 places in America, and certainly the best one. And so none of this would have happened without Brandy's vision, without her leadership. I can't think of anyone else that deserves the recognition, that deserves the Bertel Award as much as she does. Brandy isn't just a great friend, she's a great leader, she's a visionary, and she's truly taking the Port of New Orleans and taking South Louisiana to the next level. So I want to ask all of you, please join me in recognizing my good friend, in recognizing an amazing leader, and recognizing a great role model, Brandy Christian. That's a good looking tie, guys. Y'all take care.
Okay, wow, that was too much. That is due for 2020 for sure. Wow. Ooh, I cannot begin to tell you how honored I am to be standing here today, especially after rescheduling this 5 times. Wow. I cannot tell you, especially after such kind words from each of you and from those videos and from Congressman Graves. Thank you to the World Trade Center, to Ed Webb and Jennifer McCausland, and to my staff for finally making this event happen. I think we literally rescheduled 5 times, and as they mentioned, even had a hurricane thrown in there. So thank you to everyone for joining us today. It's so nice to see everyone after 7 months, and we may be in a smaller room, but the most special people are here. And thank you for joining us online as well. I would like to thank Congressman Graves for his kind introduction. I'm sorry that he couldn't be here today. Shortly after I had arrived, Congressman Graves had asked me to meet him in Baton Rouge so that he could hear my vision for the Port of New Orleans. And I will admit I was scared as hell for that meeting. He is definitely someone that does his homework. And it turned into a probably 2 to 3 hour intellectual debate about U.S. ports and the Mississippi River. And really cemented my respect for him. And anytime we struggle with policy or project issues, he is probably one of the first phone calls that we make into his office. We have definitely seen firsthand how Congressman Graves supports Louisiana's trade and maritime industry, especially now as a senior member of the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. So we really appreciate everything that he does for us on the Hill, particularly now as you can imagine everything going on in Washington, D.C. So his comments are really, really appreciated. Again, I'd really like to thank the World Trade Center and the 11 nominating organizations for this award that was founded to honor C. Alvin Bertel and his legacy. And as you mentioned, that is a huge legacy. I'm truly humbled by all the time that everyone took to make such kind comments in the video. These are people and organizations that we have worked really hard over the last few years to build relationships with, and we could not do what we do without their partnership in those relationships day in and day out. There's a few people that I'd like to recognize today. Obviously, the Port of New Orleans Dock Board, past and present. You may be the hardest working volunteers in our region, and we all benefit from that. Especially, you have no idea over the last 7 months how hard this dock board has had to work. Thank you so much for everything that you do. There's 3 former dock board members that are here today that I really need to recognize. I affectionately call them the 3 wise men. Bill Bergeron, Mike Kearney, and Rusty Barketing, who all happen to be past Bertel Award recipients as well. As mentioned, they took the bold chance on the outsider, and they were on the original hiring panel that selected me as Chief Operating Officer. And then they led the charge to appoint me as President and CEO. And, really because they thought I was the change agent, but really they were the change agents. They stepped out and they took a lot of risk by selecting the first woman. So I wouldn't be standing here if it wasn't for them, so thank you. And to all the past Bertel recipients, you really have paved the way for all of us. In all of the contributions that you've made to the maritime industry, you have really left a mark on this region. And to Gary Lagrange, my predecessor, he was supposed to be here today. He didn't make it last minute. I can make so many jokes about that right now. You have no idea. But he obviously couldn't make it last minute. But I really do want to thank him for taking a chance on this California gal and trusting me with such a great organization. And most of all, thank you to the Port of New Orleans tenants and to the ILA and to our industry partners. It's really the hard work that you do every day that makes and really drives our success. It's what you do that makes us successful. It really feels strange to be standing up here alone because all of the results that were touted in the video, I'm really blessed to work with some of the smartest and most talented staff and executives. I thank you for always having my back. I mean, day in and day out. You really always make me look good. Thank you. Thank you so much for what you do. I really applause the best team at the Port of New Orleans. And finally, to my family, for all the support and sacrifice through my busy days and all of my travel. My in-laws, Dorothy and Frank Sr., And my daughter Taylor, who is mentioned, is probably as much of a type A as me, and she's taking exams right now at school. And my husband Frank, you're my rock. Thank you for everything. And as I thought about my comments, I thought about 6 years ago when I came to New Orleans, and kind of all the goals and hopes I had. What would I want to achieve in taking on this job? And when I had the honor of taking the helm 5 years ago at the Port of New Orleans, and when I sat with the dock board, I really had 3 kind of clear goals of what I wanted to achieve and what their expectations were of me. I think first and foremost was I wanted to develop a high-performing organization in order to deliver a more modern port. I wanted to expand our cruise business to attract family-oriented cruise lines like Disney. So that was huge, and I'm happy that they will return after this pandemic. And I knew we had to get more aggressive and get more big ship ready, and as we call it internal, AKA go downriver. And I saw those challenges as easy, doable, no big deal. I always saw myself as a change agent. I think people that know me, I never saw myself as a babysitter, never wanted to be just a babysitter. No matter what job I held, I saw myself as a change agent. And as I moved up the ranks, I saw it as my responsibility. That's what I owe to my organization. And we've worked hard to build a progressive organization. And, we've had to make some really tough decisions, not always popular decisions, and especially this year. But please know that, we've done that with always looking at the strategic direction of the organization, for the better of the organization and where we need to head. And, what's amazing is we have collectively built an international brand that reaches 450 ports globally. That is amazing. And please know, when I refer to the Port of New Orleans, I mean more than the public agency that we run. This is something that has taken decades to build by many people in this room, outside of this room, by many people, our partners, my predecessors of the dock board, and it is going to be carried forward by the young talent that's coming up behind me. This has been a collective. It's a brand bigger than us. And as Garrett outlined, our trade volumes have been increasing dramatically, and our customers and our carriers are demanding more capacity so that they can bring more cargo in larger vessels. And luckily, the last 6 years, for the Port of New Orleans, being bold, it's been a pretty big winning strategy. And then suddenly 2020 arrived, and with it, challenges and uncertainty. However, one of the crucial realities the pandemic revealed, it revealed it to the world, was the importance of the supply chain. Suddenly, people wondered, where does toilet paper come from? I got to worry about that. How do I get groceries? How do grocery stores get stocked? Suddenly, truck drivers become important. Suddenly, the supply chain matters. And locally, people began to realize what people in this room already knew, that we were founded on maritime. Because when hotels and venues and restaurants were being shuttered, one industry kept working, the river, that river. We kept working. So more now than ever, it's time for us to return to our core, the core that built this city, the river. So yes, COVID may have slowed the world down a bit, but that's not the time for us to slow down. It's time for us to make progress. This is not the time for us to waste one of the biggest lessons of the pandemic, that logistics matter, that the supply chain matters. And in the thick of things, just a few months ago, I was talking with a friend and a mentor, Bill Bergeron. And he gave me a piece of advice that was so perfectly timed. He said, be optimistic, be aggressive, and when in doubt, push. So, Bill. And I appreciated the reminder, because it was that make it happen attitude that propelled me when we acquired the Public Belt Railroad. The Public Belt acquisition was a game changer. It was mentioned today. And that sent shockwaves through the shipping industry. And it made a very clear statement to our customers. I hear it all the time from ocean carriers. Because it sent a very clear message to our customers that the Port of New Orleans was ready to fully galvanize the gateway. With one board, one vision, fully aligned investments, and coordinated business development. We are more prepared to compete in a big and bold way today than at any time in the last 50 years. International trade and shipping community needs are changing so quickly, and we need to be able to accommodate larger vessels. That's just a reality. It was said multiple times today. And the Army Corps is ensuring the state will be ready by dredging the Mississippi River to 50 feet, and a big thank you to the Louisiana delegation and Governor Edwards for securing the matching state funds to move that project forward. We'll be at 50 plus feet by 2022. Who would have thought? Christy said it. Who would have thought? 2022. Dredging the river allows us to focus on the next plank of our master plan, adding container capacity to catapult this gateway into its own category. With 50-foot water draft, no air draft restrictions, and offering unmatched rail, barge, road service from day one, day of opening, we can be the only port in the Gulf that is big ship, big rail, and big river ready. The most powerful infrastructure on the entire Gulf Coast. Folks, if we come together, we have the opportunity to leverage our greatest asset, the river. And what the pandemic clearly has made clear, that we now live in a logistics-intensive world. Our container and our rail investors are ready and willing to partner with us and leverage the nearly $1 billion that the state of Louisiana and the port have already invested in our container assets. That's already what we've invested. Why would we compete against ourselves? It's time that we realize and get the ROI from what we've already invested. We've brought ourselves to this point. And to get there, we're doubling down. With a $100 million investment, we're adding 100 gauge ship-to-shore cranes that will go live this fall at the Napoleon Container Terminal to increase our capacity. They're under construction now. We're also tripling down by moving forward with plans for a development of a state-of-the-art, big ship-ready container terminal downriver. Between our current facilities and a new terminal downriver, the Port of New Orleans will be able to serve a wide range of customers and niche carriers. The new terminal will serve as a catalyst to attract new manufacturers and distribution industries that will benefit the entire state. Changing industry dynamics require intermodal options. That's just the reality of today. The port is already a pioneer and a national model in our container on barge services, and now we have the ability to leverage the New Orleans Rail Gateway. Our operations now link us to the petrochemical industry and the manufacturing plants up and down the Mississippi River, and now into the rail gateway up and down the Mississippi River and into the inland networks. And that will allow us to expand Louisiana's network. and allow us to be the dominant gateway and reach us into the heartland of the middle of America. Return New Orleans in this region to its rightful place of being the gateway into America's heartland. That is the real opportunity within our grasp. Our investments will deliver economic benefit way beyond our terminal footprint, and there is no place for parochialism and no time to delay. That has held Louisiana back for far too long. And I really have to acknowledge and thank two of my fellow port directors, Jay Hardman and Drew Heafy. Drew was supposed to be here. He couldn't make it last minute. They are already thinking innovatively and taking a lot of risk. They are both collaborating with the port to expand container cargo capacity from Baton Rouge to St. Bernard. I sincerely thank both of you for your partnership, and I look forward to our joint successes. And I have to take a moment to congratulate Jay and the Port of Baton Rouge for their recent announcement of the renewable diesel plant. Just phenomenal. That is a huge, huge win for the state of Louisiana. And Jay, I know how hard you've worked on that for a very long time, and we're just so happy for you all. Congratulations. And I share that vision because that is the very vision that Garrett and I talked about 5 years ago. And I can't believe that we stand here today on the precipice of the Mississippi River being at 50+ feet and working amongst ports to achieve a second container terminal and already moving containers between multiple ports. And that really is the opportunity that is real, with partners in industry telling us, knocking on our door saying, wake up, you have the potential if you all just come together and make it happen. So I want to assure you that we are ready to be optimistic and bold. And when we are in doubt, we are going to push. So why do I have the confidence that we can achieve this? Because I am extremely humbled every day by the hard work, the knowledge, and the commitment of our local transportation and trade community, including the committed ILA workers who are on the front lines moving cargo every day, particularly during the pandemic, and the Port of New Orleans' amazing team who work every day with unwavering dedication to our economic mission. And to know that my peers, the people with whom I work and collaborate with, the people with whom I sometimes disagree with, and the people with whom I share my visions with, you are the ones bestowing this honor on me. It makes the award all that much more special. So thank you. And as I thank you again for the award, I have to acknowledge a very special person. I would not be standing here, literally, if it was not for my mother, Rhonda O'Rourke. She was my inspiration and my role model, and now she remains my North Star. My mother had less than a high school education when my father, and 2 toddlers, when my father was killed in an automobile accident. But she was determined to not let that destroy her family, so she picked herself up and created a career for herself. And in that process, she made a wonderful life for my sister and I. And she taught this small town girl that she could be whatever and whoever she wanted to be. But what's really sobering is to realize that just a short time ago, someone like my mother, with her resolve and her resourcefulness, would have never been considered for my job, much less this prestigious award. So to be the first woman to receive this award validates everything my mother taught me about tenacity and strength. So for that reason alone, I am so honored to accept this Bertel Award. Thank you to the World Trade Center for making this event happen in 2020, despite all of the challenges. Again, I'm so appreciative of the honor. And most of all, thank you for all of your collective efforts to drive Louisiana forward, and please all be safe. Thank you again.